Hey guys, Paul here. So today I wanted to talk about the two very worst, least pleasant types of Yu-Gi-Oh players that you will encounter in this game. And that's saying something because there are a lot of annoying Yu-Gi-Oh stereotypes that we've talked about and joked about and stuff in videos. Things like the slow player or the wannabe vendor or, whatever, things like that. But this is something that I feel is almost a mentality sort of mindset thing that players can have, which makes it almost more annoying to deal with. And it comes down to the whole casual versus competitive debate, which is something you've probably heard of. It's kind of a tale as old as time in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I guess in many different games. The idea that, the competitive players are like all meta sheep and they all play the same decks and the expensive cards and they ruin the game because, whatever, this, that, and the other, they're always just trying to win. And then some people will say like casual players are the worst because like they don't understand what they're talking about and they're entitled and they want the game handed to them and whatever. Just loud arguments on the internet. The thing is though, I think it gets a little bit more specific than this. There is a specific type of competitive player that you will meet in Yu-Gi-Oh! And a specific type of casual player that you will meet, and they are the worst. So, we'll start with the competitive one, because I think this is something that you hear the most about. And you'll probably experience it if you go to a local card shop or regionals and things like that. This is the player who is pretty good at Yu-Gi-Oh! They have learned a lot of the fundamentals and they know a lot of the technical stuff in Yu-Gi-Oh! And they're quite competitive, but they are kind of an asshole too. So what you will notice is that this person is not actually like the top level competitor. This is not a Jesse Cotton and like all those players tier person, right? They're not like winning YCS events or even really topping YCS events, but they're certainly better than your average Joe. What I think I would describe it as is this is a person who oftentimes has a big fish in a small pond mentality. So, at their local card shop, maybe they're the best player in the room, they win locals pretty often, and they have the best decks and cards. Like, they've committed the money to that part. And they've learned a lot of the sort of fundamentals, bread and butters and things like that. However, they have not actually achieved what they've sort of set out to achieve or told themselves that they want to achieve. Like I said, this isn't a YCS winner. This is a person who wins locals a lot, has maybe, topped a regional or something like that. And they've maybe, gone to YCS events, but they always manage to scrub out. And this player tends to not be very pleasant because they are blaming a lot of their losses or just lack of successes on everything but themselves. So this is the sort of person who is really snarky and uppity about you playing bad decks and bad cards and stuff like that. But also they, just play the thing that maybe won the last YCS, let's say. And also, this is the person who, whenever they lose, it's somehow the fault of maybe the opponent or the judge or just some other extenuating circumstance. You will oftentimes hear this person say that they were slow played. Their opponent was just slow playing them or rule sharked them somehow. Don't bother asking them why they didn't actually call the judge when it happened, because that's like a sticky situation. They don't want to talk about it too much. But happens a lot, right? This person who they've gotten a taste of what victory is like, and they really desperately want to win Yu-Gi-Oh! They really desperately want to be a top level player. They want to be in the conversation of, the greats, but they're sort of struggling with finding out that outside of being a big fish in a small pond, they are middling at the end of the day. And they have not sort of, processed it and rationalized it fully, and so for them, it's always someone else's fault. I've heard people complain because their opponent played a deck that they weren't prepared for, and that's somehow their opponent's fault. Or their opponent did what they considered to be a misplay, right? My opponent, asked this thing that you're not supposed to ash against this deck, or they were playing this hand trap and no one's even playing this format. Why are you playing it? No one plays that card. That's stupid. Like, why'd you play that? It beat them, but somehow it's the opponent's fault that they it just, you know what I mean? And these players, I think, genuinely, you will see them blaming not just what happened in the round, but even just the environment. They'll blame their local card scene. Like, you guys are the reason I didn't top this YCS or I didn't, make day 2 or whatever, is because all the people around me are so bad. Like, all the people at my locals they're filthy casuals, they don't have the best decks, I don't get any good playtesting practice, they're bad, and I pick up all these bad habits from playing with them. These are things that I've heard in real life. And, so they have dulled my skills, and that's why I can't, kind of push it to the next level. If I was just surrounded by the greats, then I could, prove myself to be the same as them, and that whole thing. I think where these players ultimately sort of stumble is truly that they have not looked inward, and also they aren't curious about Yu-Gi-Oh! It's kind of how I would describe it if I could be a little bit more candid about it. I think that they want to win. They want the spoils of what victory means. Maybe that's the clout, maybe that's just, the prizing, although Yu-Gi-Oh! Prizing isn't amazing, or just being in that conversation. But they themselves don't actually necessarily like Yu-Gi-Oh! They like winning, and they want to win on the match slip, have a top, have a whatever, but they don't enjoy the entire process of getting there. And that's a bit of a shame. Anyway, though, that's the first type of person. The second type of person is a casual player. This isn't me saying that all casual players are bad. This is actually the casual player who secretly, deep down, is pretty competitive about Yu-Gi-Oh! They just don't want to admit it. So this casual player will say things along the lines of, I hate all these meta sheep, they're killing Yu-Gi-Oh! They're killing the game, and they're ruining things and ruining all the fun because they all play the best decks, and they all play the same thing. And they all play all these expensive cards, and it's not fair, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Is way more fun when, you don't have to deal with all these meta sheep playing the same thing. The thing is, though, they will also be a self-proclaimed casual, I'm just in it for fun, guys. But my sort of tenet about all of that is if you want to claim to be playing Yu-Gi-Oh! For fun and claim that you're a casual player, you have to truly be willing to own that label. If you're really just playing for fun and winning and losing doesn't matter, it's just all for love of the game, then why are you so mad that you're losing to the best decks, right? Why are you so mad that people are choosing to play decks that give them the best chance of winning in a tournament that you both entered? Because that's the thing, right? If you're playing in a tournament and you pay money and you travel to go there or whatever, and we're talking about even that if that's just locals, regionals, whatever, it's just kind of an agreed upon thing that we're all trying to win here. The only person who's angry at the idea that other people are trying to win is a person that's saying that they don't care at all. You see where that's kind of contradicting? So those are the players that I find to be kind of the worst examples of casual players, the toxic casual and the toxic competitive type. To reiterate, these people, I think in both cases, are not being honest with themselves about their relationship with Yu-Gi-Oh! They want to be a fun-loving, casual guy. I'm just here for fun, playing pet decks, whatever, but I'm also furious when I lose because people are playing decks that are better than my deck, but they have every right to play those cards because they're legal and that person owns the cards and it's a tournament and you're trying to win. Or the person who, they want to claim to be really good, I'm a good player at Yu-Gi-Oh!, but they are blaming anybody but themselves when they lose, because ultimately they don't want to enjoy the process of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! They just want the spoils of victory. And these people I find can be just some of the worst to be around. Whether it's, listening to somebody rant after a round at a regional about how they got completely just victimized, right? The person rule sharked them, the judge had it out for them, someone slow played them, they got paired down this round, whatever, just something happened that caused them to lose. It's not their fault, right? Maybe they bricked, maybe, their opponent sacked them. I couldn't have done anything. There was no other way this game could have played out. I could have made no different decisions because I'm perfect. I know all this stuff. My opponent just, played a dumb card that no one is supposed to play and it caught me off guard, and that's their fault somehow. I think with Yu-Gi-Oh! So much of it just comes down to, are you being honest with yourself about, who you are, why you're playing this game, what you want out of it? Are you truly enjoying Yu-Gi-Oh! Or do you only really enjoy it when you're winning? Because I've met a lot of top Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, really talked with them, chatted it up, and these are oftentimes people who are, they're curious about winning and losing. They are curious about exploring different ways to play decks. I think that the tier that's underneath them is kind of where things get bad, because these are the players who want to follow in those footsteps, want to be in those circles with the top players, but they themselves are not the top players. They want to sort of regurgitate the best way to play the game and what ideal, deck lists, lines, spreadsheet combos, whatever are, but they don't quite have the X factor of enjoying Yu-Gi-Oh! And enjoying outplaying their opponent. They just want to win. And again, on that casual side, there's a person who claims that they're in it for fun, but they don't actually like it when their fun deck loses. So yeah, those in my opinion are the two worst kinds of Yu-Gi-Oh players that you can encounter. But they're not beyond salvation, and I do think that sometimes it's a phase for people. Sometimes people have to kind of like burn out of it and eventually take a break and take a step back and realize, I was being a toxic asshole competitive person. I was being a toxic ass casual person. A lot of times I've seen that be the case for people. They just have to kind of grow out of it. It happens a lot with like people who just get into the competitive scene and they're maybe younger, in their later teens or early 20s, and that's kind of the mindset they have. Or oftentimes on the competitive side, it might be people who are a little bit older and like you could call them Yugi boomers or whatever it is. But you just have to accept that everybody kind of enjoys this game a little bit differently and kind of plays for different reasons, but you just need to be honest about why it is that you're playing and what you want out of this game. So yeah, that's pretty much the video. Hopefully you guys maybe found some relatability in it. I'm sure that everybody can name a person at their locals. Don't actually name them in the comments or anything, but you can give them an alias. Everybody's met this person at their locals, like both sides of it. The angry casual person who keeps claiming they're casual, the angry competitive who's like, they dominate their locals, but they can never like kind of get that big win and they blame it on everybody else. So let me know, have you encountered this player? How do you typically deal with this player? Have you been this player even? I'd love to hear more about it down below in the comments, and we can talk about it in chat and discuss. Anyways, I'm going to be making more of these Paul Talks videos again. I've decided I've been away from it for too long and I've just got so goddamn much to say about Yu-Gi-Oh! It really will be a fun time. They won't all be amazing, fun, happy topics, like this is kind of a rant, but they also won't all be negative, and I'll try to, offer some sort of a solution in some of them anyway. All right, that's going to be it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bastard.